Hey everyone, and welcome back to another perfect park day video. And today we're going to be talking about Universal. And usually when I go to Universal Orlando, I do both parks in one day. So even if I go back and do a second day, I will always do both in the same day, if that makes sense. I just like to do that. I love to go from one park to the other. So I'm going to be talking you through the whole day, what I would do, where I would eat, all that kind of stuff, attractions. So let's just get straight into it. The first thing that's a little bit different is getting there. Obviously, normally we're staying at Disney and it's easy to just hop onto a bus to get over there. So we're going to be staying at Pop Century, which we always do when we're doing these perfect park days. And to get to Universal, I would definitely use an Uber. For me, that's the easiest way. It's not super expensive. It's definitely the cheapest way in my experience. So I would definitely do that. And last time I was there, they did have a new drop-off area, which was at the top level of the parking lot. So from there, you just kind of walk through the same as everyone else who has been parking their car, and you get to the security area. And then to get to the parks, you obviously go through City Walk. And I would have arrived a little bit early on this perfect day because on the way to the park there is somewhere that I would want to stop off and get some breakfast, and that would definitely be Voodoo Donut. So I would make sure I'm there a little bit early so that I can still do that before I head over to the parks. And Voodoo Donut is awesome. They have some really good stuff in there. I probably wouldn't get my coffee from there. I think I'd just get a donut and then have it on the way walking over towards Universal Studios, which is the first park that I would go to. But Voodoo Donut is excellent. They have so many different options. They have some seasonal items. They've got other things that are there all the time, but all of them are really good. So I would grab myself a Voodoo Donut and then head over towards the park entrance. And whenever I go to Universal Studios, there's one place that I will be heading first thing, and that is over to Diagon Alley. And there's a couple of different ways that you can go to get there. I like to go via the Starbucks, which is over in the kind of, you know, the area that looks like New York. It's probably got an official name that I don't know exactly what it is. I tend to head that way, and there is a Starbucks location which is just over by the Fast and the Furious attraction. So I'd grab myself a coffee from there on the way because, you know, I need my coffee before I can really get into doing anything. But I would have that and then walk over to Diagon Alley. And walking into this area is one of my favorite things in any of the parks in Orlando. I'm a huge Harry Potter fan. If you are a fan, you will just be blown away by it if you haven't seen it yet. And if you have, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. It's such an incredible part of the park, and the way it's been done and the theming, it's just great. So I would head into there, drink my coffee, walk around a little bit, just take some photos and stuff, and as soon as I'm done with my coffee, I would go on to the Escape from Gringotts attraction, which is such a great ride. It's probably my favourite ride in all of Universal. It's absolutely excellent. You do have to locker your bags. Always remember that at Universal. That's something that you will need to do that you don't really have to think about hardly ever, if ever, at Disney. It's not really a thing, but at Universal you very often do have to. It's sometimes a bit of a hassle. And also make sure that you have, I try and put in a little clip, I've got a belt loop thing that I can put on, like a retractable thing to put my ticket in, my park ticket, because you do need that to get your bag back out of the locker. And I've had situations before where it's just been in a pocket and it flies out on the ride, and then you have to go to guest services, and it's a whole thing. So definitely make sure you've got yourself one of those. But the queuing area for this attraction is something else. You really feel like you're walking through Gringotts Bank. You go down to the vault. It's just great. It's so good. So definitely we would do that first. And once I'm out of there, I would go into some of the stores at Diagon Alley. They are just the best. Whenever you're reading the Harry Potter books or watching the movies, I love the scenes in Diagon Alley where they're buying all their school supplies. The stores are like so quirky and interesting, and they've really captured that in this area. So I love looking around. And then I know it's kind of early in the day. We've already eaten some sugar in the form of a Voodoo Donut, but we're gonna eat something else sugary. Now this always happens to me at Universal because I do have a bit of a pattern of what things I do in what order, but I would get myself some ice cream from Florian Fortescue's because I love it in there. Like I say, a bit early in the day, probably too much sugar, but we'll sort that out later. We're on vacation, so you can do what you want, right? So I would have that and go and sit on my bench. There's a little bench that's kind of hidden down an alleyway, and there's usually no one there. So that's normally the place I would go to have my ice cream. And once I've done that, I would go into Nocturne Alley. That's another part of the Diagon Alley area. and it's again so well done, so well themed. The store that they have in there is like really creepy and weird and just exactly like you would imagine it from the movie. So yeah, it's just a must do if you're a Harry Potter fan, and even if you're not a huge fan, I think anyone could completely appreciate the theming and just the atmosphere of the whole of the Harry Potter area of both parks, but particularly Diagon Alley is my absolute favourite. I really do love that. And from there I would head out of Diagon Alley and just around the corner to the Hogwarts Express, which is another thing I absolutely love to do. And although we've only just got to Universal Studios, this is kind of a weird way that I do the parks. So I do Diagon Alley, I would go on the Hogwarts Express across to Islands of Adventure to then do the rest of the Harry Potter stuff, and then I might come back again. That's just how I do things. Other people would do it differently, but I love to do that, and the Hogwarts Express is a great experience. I love the way they've done it. The carriages do feel really authentic to the movie, and the way it works with the screens, so you really feel like you're making that journey from London to Hogwarts. It's just amazing, it's great. So once I get over there, that brings you out into Hogsmeade, which is the original area in the Universal parks that they had for the Wizarding World, and there's some great stuff over here to do as well. The first thing I would do is get in line for the Hagrid attraction. Now the name of this attraction is, I seem to remember quite long, so I'll put it on the screen, but the motorcycle attraction, which used to be Dueling Dragons back in the day, very long time ago. It's all been obviously completely taken away and redone now, and I've still not done that ride. It was there when I was on my trip in February and March last year, but it had a very long wait and I was on a solo trip. I didn't really want to do the wait for the attraction by myself, so I still haven't ridden it. That's definitely something I would make a priority because it does look really good. And from there, I probably would need a minute. I don't know, it might be quite an intense ride, so that would be a good time to look around the stores that they have in Hogsmeade. Again, the theming is just absolutely excellent. They have stores that sell apparel, they have honeydukes, it's really great, and they also have the 3 broomsticks. So I probably would grab a drink in there and have a little sit down for a minute, just look at my photos I've taken and stuff. I usually like to take a break to do that at some points. And this is kind of a weird thing to mention because I don't normally talk about restrooms. However, in this particular area of the park, I do always have to visit the restroom because Moaning Myrtle is in there. Sometimes you don't necessarily notice if you're just kind of rushing in there and it's quite loud in there, but you can actually hear her in the restroom, which I always think is awesome. So I definitely would just have to nip in there to visit Moaning Myrtle, whether I needed to or not, because I just think that's a really cool detail. And then it would be time to head up to Forbidden Journey, which is obviously the ride inside Hogwarts Castle. And when it comes to themed queuing areas, it doesn't really get much better than this ride. You walk up to the castle, you have to locker your bag obviously, but then the queuing area that you walk through, you are actually walking through the castle past Dumbledore's office. There's kind of outside areas which are like where the greenhouses are, where they have their lessons out there. It's just unbelievable, to be honest. It's such an amazing queuing area. So even if you don't want to do the ride, even if you think it might be a little bit too intense for you, I would highly recommend walking through the queuing area, and there is an exit towards the end that you can go out before actually getting to the attraction itself. But it's really an excellent attraction. I will say you can get a little bit motion sick on it. I'm not someone who really suffers with that ever, but if there is anything that's going to make me feel a bit dodgy, then it will be that or the Simpsons Attraction. And it can get you a little bit. You are getting quite kind of twisted and turned and this 3D kind of stuff going on, so yeah, just watch out for that if you do suffer with motion sickness. But it's so worth it. It's such a great attraction and I absolutely love it, so I would have to do that. So from there, before we head back over to Universal Studios, I would go and do a few other things in Islands of Adventure. I'm not a huge fan of water rides and stuff like that, which a lot of the attractions are over at Islands of Adventure, but there are definitely some things that I would want to check out. And also I would probably eat lunch in Islands of Adventure because I really like Burger Digs, which is in the Jurassic Park area. For some reason that's always been my kind of go-to lunch spot. There's a lot of seating in there. You don't normally struggle to find somewhere, even if it's on a busy day. So I'd probably stop there for lunch. By the time we've done all of the Harry Potter stuff in both parks, it probably would be around lunchtime by now. So I would do that. And from there, I would head through the comic strip area. I love taking photos around there. It's so nostalgic for me because Islands of Adventure is the very first park I ever did in Orlando back in 2002 on my first trip. So I love to just walk around those areas that have been there for such a long time, get some photos and stuff. And then I would go to Spiderman, which is one of my absolute favourite rides. It's very similar to Transformers. The queuing area is great. Again, it's very themed. You're kind of walking through the newspaper offices and I just love that. So if I was by myself, I probably would do that and skip the queuing area because you usually can get on very quickly in the single rider. But it's such a fun attraction. I absolutely love it and I have to try and do that every time I'm at Islands of Adventure. And while we're in that general area, depending who I was travelling with, they may want to ride the Hulk. I have ridden the Hulk before. It actually, again, was the very, very first attraction I did because as you walk into Islands of Adventure, it's kind of right there. So it's the first thing I ever rode in all of Orlando in any of the parks, but it's a little bit intense for me. I'm kind of a bit of a wimp when it comes to rides, but I know Ian always likes to ride that. Becky's done it, I'm sure, so whoever I'm with might want to go ahead and do that while we're there. And from there I would kind of loop around the other side of the park, which takes you back towards Hogsmeade, because I would want to do the Hogwarts Express in reverse to go back over to Universal Studios. Doing it both ways, you do get a different experience both times because obviously you're doing the different journeys. So it's well worth making sure you do experience it in both directions because it is different. So back over to Universal Studios, I would head out of King's Cross and then we can do some of the other attractions over at Universal. And I think the first thing I would probably do is go to the left and walk around to Men in Black. And again, this is such a nostalgic attraction for me. It's been there since I very first visited the parks and it's really, really actually good fun. It's a very similar kind of idea to rides where you're shooting at stuff like Buzz Lightyear and Toy Story Mania, but you really kind of like spin around in the ride vehicle. Again, this is something which is very consistent with Universal. The queuing area for this ride is absolutely amazing. It's huge and you really do feel like you're kind of walking through the Men in Black headquarters. It's so good. It's really, really well done and I just love doing that. So we would ride that. Again, you have to locker your bags, so always remember to do that before you head into the attraction. And from there, that would take us very easily around to the Simpsons area. And this area is great because as well as having the actual attraction, they do have, well, they've got two attractions actually. They also have some kind of midway type games. It's like a bit of a carnival kind of idea. They have a store there as well with all the Simpsons merchandise. Sometimes there's a meet and greet where you can meet the Simpsons characters, and they've got some other dining options, and they even have like their own kind of food court area there with various different things. So it's a really great area of the parks. If you've always been a fan of Simpsons, it's just really, really awesome having kind of like a real life version to step into. And the attraction here used to be Back to the Future back in the day, and Back to the Future was one of my favourite attractions. It's one of my favourite movies. I love it. I really, really do miss that attraction so much. I wish it was still there, but we can't go back in time despite what the movie may suggest, and it is now the Simpsons attraction. And this attraction is great. Again, watch out for the motion sickness because it can get you a little bit. Like I said, I don't normally suffer, but I have done on this attraction. But you really do feel quite immersed in this kind of experience that's going on, and it is very good fun. So I would highly recommend doing it. But I know sometimes people take like a travel sickness tablet beforehand. That might help you, but I don't know. I don't normally suffer too badly, but I know some people really do on that ride. And after that, just in case we are feeling slightly not great after riding that ride, the perfect ride is just coming up around the corner, which is E.T. You won't be feeling sick on this one. It is not a thrill ride. It is a real classic that has been there for years and years and years. Some people don't like it and think it needs to be replaced. I absolutely love it. I love the movie. I think the attraction is super cute, and I'm a sucker for like really nostalgic attractions that I always used to love doing. So I hope it never goes away. It's tucked away in the corner. It's not hurting anyone there. Just leave it alone. Leave it there. It's good. It's good. And they do have an element to it where you give your name at the beginning and then E.T. is supposed to say goodbye to you at the end. Doesn't always work, but sometimes it does, so that's kind of cool as well. So we would do that attraction, and hopefully, yeah, we will be feeling okay after doing The Simpsons by that point. And from there, I would head over to Transformers, which, as I was saying earlier, is very similar to the Spider-Man ride. It is a newer attraction, and you can tell that when you're on the ride, but like I said, I do love them both, but I think I slightly prefer Spider-Man, but Transformers is excellent as well. It does have quite a long queuing area, but I often find if it's not too much of a busy day, it can even be almost a walk on, so I would definitely go and do that. And that would bring us out in the vicinity over by the Fast and the Furious ride, which I won't be riding because I have said this before, it's not my favourite thing, so it's definitely not something that I would prioritise. But one thing I do prioritise is Starbucks, which we've already had one, but that would bring us out right by the Starbucks location again, so I would grab another quick Starbucks, I think, just to get my energy levels back up and just have a wander around that general area. Like I said, it's very much like the kind of New York streets kind of vibe. You can get some really good photos around there, so I might have a little sit down, drink my coffee, and then it would be time to ride the Mummy. And this is a great attraction. It's kind of at the top of my tolerance level for thrill rides, I would say, because it's quite deceptive. Like, I always forget how intense it is until I go back on it, and then I'm like, oh, actually, yeah, that is quite intense. Some of the ride, you are kind of moving around different scenes fairly slowly, so it doesn't feel too intense. There's a lot going on and it's a dark ride, but then all of a sudden it kind of takes off roller coaster style, so you do just have to be prepared for that. It is in the dark, which I actually find almost less scary when I'm on a roller coaster because I can't really see what's going on, but it is great. And if I would say if I can ride it, most people would probably be okay because I am a bit of a wimp, but it's great. I do always try and do that attraction if I can. And from there we would then be over by the Jimmy Fallon attraction. Again, this is not something that is one of my favorite things to do. It's definitely not a priority, but while I was there, if there was a short wait or I'd been able to get in a virtual queue, I know sometimes they have that system going on, I certainly would ride it because it is fun. And again, it has a really interactive queuing area. There's lots of things going on while you're waiting. It's quite like a long process to actually get onto the ride itself, but there are a lot of things to kind of keep you entertained in the meantime. So yeah, if it worked out time-wise, I would definitely do that. And that kind of does bring me around to the entrance kind of area to the park. And if I was with someone who wanted to ride Rip Ride Rocket, that would be a good time to do it. I certainly don't ride that ride. It absolutely terrifies me. Ian does quite often do it, but yeah, it's quite an intense roller coaster. So if anyone I was with wanted to ride that, that would be a really good time to do it. And before I then exit the park, I would definitely want to do either Shrek or the Minion attraction. It really depends on how long the wait is. I know the Minion attraction does sometimes have quite a long wait, and Shrek is not too bad. I don't do it every single time I'm at Universal, but I would do one of the two of those on my way out of the park. So once we get out of the park, we are going to be heading to our location for dinner, and definitely at Universal there are two options for me, always the same two, one of which is Toothsome Chocolate Emporium and the other one is Cowfish. And it's always really hard for me to choose. Whenever I do a trip, I normally try and go to Universal twice so that I can experience both, because I absolutely love both of them. But on this occasion, we're going to go over to Toothsome Chocolate Emporium. I absolutely love this restaurant. The theming is excellent. On the menu, a lot of the food, even if it's savoury, does have like little chocolate elements to it. It's really interesting. I always get the same thing, which is the avocado bruschetta, and then I get the chicken bourguignon. Bourguignon? Is that how you say that? I think that's how you say it. It's so good. The food is really good there, and they have excellent desserts as well. Normally I'm too full for a dessert. I do try and sometimes have one of their milkshakes. They have really crazy milkshakes there. You do also get Jock and Penelope, I think her name is, who are the kind of characters there. At the moment with the pandemic, I don't know what would be going on with that, whether they're there or they're not, but they normally come around to the table and have a chat with you, which is really fun. And like I said, the whole theming in there is just excellent, so that would definitely be my location for dinner for certain. And that would bring us to the end of the day at Universal. And like I was saying, I probably would try and do 2 days, so if I went back a second day, I would probably do things largely the same, but I normally want to go back and do the Harry Potter stuff more than once because it is just one of my favourite things to do in all of Orlando. I absolutely love Harry Potter and the whole of the Wizarding World there. And obviously to get myself back, I would head through City Walk and maybe head into a couple of the stores there if I wanted to, if there was anything that kind of took my interest as I was passing, and then go and get myself an Uber. And that would be my day at Universal. So let me know in the comments, as always, what would your day look like at Universal? What are your favourite attractions? Where do you go for lunch? What snacks do you have? Where do you go for dinner? Tell me everything that you love to do at Universal. Obviously I don't talk about Universal as much as I do Disney, Disney, but I do absolutely love it, and I do cover Universal a lot in the vlogs. Back in the early days, my trips in like 2002, 2004, 2005, I spent way more time at Universal than I ever did at Disney. That was just kind of the way that I used to do things, staying on International Drive, so I really do love those parks. And as always, I just want to say a huge thank you to you guys for watching these videos. So many of you have reached out and said you love this Perfect Park Day series. I'm very excited to get back to the parks to make more vlogs. I can't even tell you how much I want to do that, how much I'm looking forward to it. I really can't wait to do a new Disney in Detail vlog series. But I really appreciate all of you watching all of the old series back in the meantime and watching these videos and liking and commenting, subscribing. Also, all of you who support me over on Patreon, I really appreciate that so much. We do have a podcast over there as well, so I will link that in the description. But just a huge thank you. You are all awesome. And I hope you're all staying safe and well. It's been crazy times. Hopefully we are heading out of said crazy times, fingers crossed. But yeah, I hope you're all well, and thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.